you're living in a traumatic event which has no deadline. We do not know when this will end. And that type of uncertainty has definitely impacted the level of depression and anxiety that we're seeing.
The trauma telecommuting is causing for millions of Americans, and why a study shows it can be harder on working moms than dads. Plus, our panel of female tech leaders weigh in.
What I love about women in general is when they come together, they are okay in being honest and vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, we find strength.
Women in the tech world are coming together to cope with the new normal, how you can find comfort in that community.
This episode of Get Witty With It was made possible by Technologent. Technologent mobilizes the power of technology to turn their clients' vision into reality, enabling them to focus on driving innovation, increasing productivity, and outperforming the market. Learn more at technologent.com.
Hello and welcome to Get Witty With It, Women Talk Tech, a podcast designed for women in the IT channel. I'm Andrea Medeiros.
And I'm Kenna Johnson with The Channel Company. First today, we're getting our panel's perspective on what we're calling living off balance.
It's that concept of shifting from family needs to work needs, all within the same space, our homes. Our panel of solution providers will weigh in on concepts like brain crackle, changing tolerance levels, and a double standard of how we feel we need to look in virtual meetings versus men.
So let's get to know our panel. Samara Halterman, VP of Marketing, Trace3. Donna Leonardo, VP of Sales and Business Development, Future Tech Enterprise, along with Heather Gonzales, VP, Global Communications and Strategic Alliances at Technologent. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. We've all been working remotely, as you know, for about a year now, and there have certainly been ups and downs. And that might get easier as children start to head back to school. But listen to this. A 2020 Yale University study shows telecommuting moms spend significantly more time performing housework when they work from home than dads. I know, it's pretty unbelievable. Researchers found moms spending 49 minutes more a day on housework and 33 minutes more a day working with a child compared to dads. Samara, I want to go to you first. What do you think about that data point? Have you talked to any of the other moms about that? And have you experienced that sort of brain crackle, as we call it, kind of transitioning from kids to home needs to work?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and again share the screen with all of you once again. I think that I love the term brain crackle, of course, because it speaks to that feeling you have when you're in the middle of a presentation and your kid is all of a sudden hovering in the virtual background and you're trying to attend to their needs and also continue with your presentation. I don't have a great, I've solved it answer. I think that we've learned a tolerance. I think that a term that I've started to use a lot with myself, with my team, with peers, with other moms in the space is grace and space. Right. So just looking into finding that opportunity for all of us to have a little bit of grace with each other. So maybe taking a step back and also realizing that we all just need a minute. My girls and I have kind of gotten into a cadence in terms of mommy's presenting. It's time for mama to talk. These are the times you can talk to me. These are the times we talked about that last time. And so just getting into a cadence and a rhythm with that. It's hard. It's just hard. There's no other ways about it.
And your kids are young.
Yeah, 4th grade and 7th grade. And so they need a lot of constant. I have a great, very supportive husband, but I think like most moms will know, if mom and dad are sitting there, the kids go to mom. So my husband may be not working and I'm in the middle of a presentation and my kids are, hey mom, hey mom. And so just embracing the grace and space and taking time when you can, if you can, right? Take a walk, take a minute, take a meditation, whatever that looks like for you, embracing that.
I want to go to Heather because I know you have kids of a different age group. Have you experienced that brain crackle as well? And how do you balance that?
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks for having me. It's great to be on with all these lovely women. As you said, my kids are older and they're pretty self-sufficient, but I do have employees and friends with young kids. And, when the kids need them at random points throughout the day, they don't really understand that mommy can't give them their undivided attention at any given moment. So there's guilt and there's frustration toward the kids, and then there's stress and anxiety and self-doubt when it comes to work, because as we know, women feel, that they always have to prove themselves. So this constant going back and forth between family and work during the middle of the workday under the same roof really takes its toll. And, my advice, and I loved what Samara had to say, first and foremost would be self-love and forgiveness, and, making sure that moms and dads communicate with their supervisors about what's going on. And I think that helps alleviate the added stress and anxiety around work when your superior knows, I may have these interruptions. So, yeah, it's a struggle. And, my hat's off to the moms that have the younger kids that, have to work around that.
Touching on what you said, let's talk about the tolerance levels. Are they running out? How are you balancing work, family, and kids all at home?
I really had to up my game on this. So, I found at the start of the day, I'd be, the nice mom making breakfast, sending them upstairs to go and get their day started. But then I'd come out at night and the house would be destroyed because they're now trying to make themselves something to eat. And they'd be on Xbox or on their phones. And to me, I'm like, you're being lazy. So, I'd try and breathe through it. And I'd say, okay, let's go for a family walk or family board game. And, I'd be met with no's. Finally, one day my daughter said, Mom, don't take offense to it. We are not used to being around you guys this much. So we also need a break from you. And, that put a new perspective in it for me. And I realized that, we all need our space, and we all need to be sympathetic to each other's needs. So, I think tolerance kind of works both ways. And I hadn't thought of that until my daughter pointed that out to me. So I learned a lesson from her.
Speaking of tolerance, Donna, in all of you manage teams, and we've been doing this for a year. All of us have had the babies in the background and the dogs in the background. Would you say, Donna, just from what you've seen, people are still as tolerant of all of that, all of those distractions, or do you see that fading or see it fading as we move forward?
I know for me personally, I am trying really hard to be as tolerant or more tolerant than I was in the beginning. I see how some of the young parents are struggling, parents of young children are struggling. And my kids are grown. I don't know what I would do if I had, a child crawling across the keyboard. And I have to tell you, the amount of cats and dogs that I've seen going across, for some reason, so many people on my team thought now was a good time to get a puppy. So we've got dogs barking everywhere, and it's been really crazy, but I've really tried to be tolerant because I've heard the struggles that they're going through, and I just really, I feel for them, and I want them to know that, this is a safe place. And if it's a customer call, obviously we try to be a little more, responsible for keeping them out of the room, but, it can't always be the way either. But for internal calls, if somebody shows up in screen, it's fine.
It's funny you talked about cats. Literally, I muted myself before we got on here to tell my husband to feed the cats so they wouldn't be crawling on the keyboard during this podcast.
Very, very popular thing.
Talking about those video calls, do we feel like there's a double standard between women and men on how we have to look as opposed to how they look on camera?
And I will say you all look very nice today.
For you, lady.
Not that it should matter.
Well, I work across the hall from my husband. We're both working from home, and he has what he calls his Zoom shirt. So he'll have a t-shirt on, and the minute he has to get on a call, he puts on his Zoom shirt and he's good to go. I have to put on makeup. I have to make sure my hair is right. It is a little bit different, but it's always been that way. Men have it a little bit easier. And I do want to go back to the comment you made before about the study about how women are doing more at home and more with the children. I think that's always the way. I don't think it's just that work from home. I think, in my opinion, that women seem to carry a little bit more of the housekeeping burden. And that's just, I don't know. I think that's the way it is, but I think things are always going to be a little different. Hopefully it's not in the big ways. So that's what's really important.
Samara, have you seen that as well, as far as feeling a little bit more like you have to put the makeup on and have your hair done to be on video? Do you feel like there's a double standard there?
I do. I've actually, after we met initially, I pitched it to a couple of colleagues, male colleagues of mine, and they dismissed it pretty quickly with their baseball hats on during the video call that we were on, which the irony was lost. I think there is the double standard, but I think that goes across the board. I think that women in a certain point in their careers make a choice that you will present yourself in a certain way, and there will be opportunities that are based on that. And that is what it is. We can ignore it. We can say it doesn't exist. But I think that women, how they choose to present themselves, are given opportunity that if you present yourself in a different way, you won't. I think that's the case for all people, but women especially. I think that the way that you choose to present yourself matters. And I think that there is a double standard there, and will always be a double standard. And we can make a choice. There's definitely been days where I worked out and the kids needed something, and I am not getting on video today. And I think that tolerance is increasing in terms of, today's a video day, today's not a video day. I still am a huge advocate for having video interaction, because it's the only way to keep us connected right now, unfortunately. So I think that, again, back to that grace and space, I think saying, okay, I would prefer all of us to be on video. If you're not having a video day, no problem. Let's not have a video day. So just recognizing where that is. To answer your question, it's always a double standard. It always will be.
When we talk about the pay gap, when we talk about the double standard women deal with in general, do you think this increase in remote work and having to pivot, do you think that will set us back further and make it harder to close that pay gap?
Studies have shown so far that organizations are now hiring people that aren't in certain vicinities, right? So they don't have to be in LA, for instance, if they live in San Diego or, whatever city. They even, if I wanted a job in Boston, I could take that. So hopefully that perspective is not going to set us further back. I think too that, from a cultural standpoint, I hope that more companies are realizing that bringing people from different areas and from different backgrounds and more females versus more males into the organization helps create a new culture, right? Because we bring different perspectives. So I don't think this is going to be a setback. I do worry though that, so many women did have to step out of their jobs in order to be home with their children and help them school, a lot of the moms with younger kids. So I think we need to work really hard at getting them back into the workforce and making them feel comfortable and confident in coming back. Because once you're out for a while, sometimes you lose that confidence.
Let's talk about the psychological impact of what we're going through and how there's no end in sight right now. How's it affecting you?
I've noticed that the impact is a lot more on single people. I have quite a few single people that work for me and work with me, and I worry about them because I feel like they're alone a lot. We started with our inside team just having once a week, a half hour to just have a chat. We talk about, yesterday we were talking about that they're changing the electric meters on our houses in this area. I mean, it's just regular conversation that you'd have in the break room, because I think they just need that social interaction. I think it's hard on different people in different ways. I know for myself, I have older parents, and it's been a very bad struggle this past year. And I know people with children are struggling. So it's been hard in probably every way you can think of. So you just have to try to do the best you can to help people through it, and to, I think Heather was one that said before, to self-care. You have to self-love and make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because that's important too.
That's a good point, Donna. And Samara, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, though. Your girls are going back to school. Do you feel like there's a positive outlook? Do you feel like we could start living in balance again? What do you see the next 3 months looking like?
Yeah, Thank you. I do see the light at the end of the tunnel. Without getting political, I think the vaccines that are coming and how quickly they're able to get out and the feeling that people have to be able to move about. I see the light at the tunnel. I see that my kids being able to go back to school and participate and see people. You know, I shared earlier that my youngest, she's in 4th grade, came home yesterday from her first day back and said it was the best day ever. So I think having those little nuggets as we move through will give us the light that we all need.
What are you looking forward to? What do you in the next couple months? It's been a year. It looks like things are going to change for the better. What are you looking forward to? And what do you think women should be looking forward to?
Reconnecting. I think Samara said it very well. You know, her daughter going back to school, best day of her life, just reconnecting. I get my energy from people. I love being in front of people. I love traveling and conferences and just that reconnection that just seems to have been lost, you know, and hugs. So
Well
yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Donna, what about you?
Definitely hugs. I have grandchildren, and believe me, Zoom or you know, seeing them on FaceTime is fine, but hugs are the best. Vacations. I can't wait to go sit on a beach somewhere and have a vacation and
have a drink.
Yeah, definitely a drink. I'll be doing a little of that even without the, but I do think though, even though there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I think a lot of companies that are not going to go back to the office full time, they're seeing how much money they can save on rent and that things work this way. So I think it's a different light at the end of the tunnel. So we'll see how that works out. But I am looking forward to going out to dinner on Friday nights and vacationing and all the things that we used to do.
Me too. Samara, we're going to close it out with you. What are you looking forward to besides travel?
Creativity of innovation that has come out of this year is going to produce some very cool things. And connecting with people, reconnecting with people, and seeing what people have been able to think about and create in the work environment, what the new workforce will look like for all of us. I know many offices didn't believe that remote work was a thing. Heather touched on this earlier. You know, you can accept a job in Boston when you live in California. And so I think what will allow is this really beautifully diverse workforce that wasn't available to us before, and the innovation that will come from it, especially in a tech world, right? And I also think that women, as we see here today, are really interested in supporting each other more so than ever, especially helping moms that have been, you know, forced out or needed to take out. And so I think those diversity points are going to benefit all of us.
Awesome.
Well said.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, a clinical psychologist enters the conversation: how to cope with the impact of remote work, and will this trend have a lasting impact on our collective psyche?
Plus, there's a community for that. We talk with our new Women of the Channel community manager about how you can get support.
This episode of Get Witty With It was made possible by Trace3. Trace3, the premier provider of technical business solutions, integrating IT products and services with insightful consultation in order to provide total transformation for both executives and organizations. Learn more at trace3.com. Welcome back. We're joined by clinical psychologist at New York Institute of Technology, Dr. Anu Raj. Dr. Raj, you've been listening in on the last segment, and just from your perspective, how do you feel about people's reactions to remote work?
So it's really interesting that you're talking about reaction to remote work, but I'm going to bring up something larger. It's the impact of the pandemic and therefore being forced to work in a remote environment, right? If it had not been for this pandemic, we would have had our own life as usual. So, you know, there is a nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, that kicks in our brain, which is a protective system for us that has helped us survive through our cave days. And in our emotional center, there's an alarm that goes off when we're in danger, and it's to help us survive. It's that fight or flight mode that everyone talks about, right? And what it does is the stress hormones like cortisol or norepinephrine and adrenaline kick in. And what they do is they really start focusing on your muscles, and you get ready for, you know, either you're going to fight the bear or you're going to flee the bear. We've been in that mode for over a year. And so there's talk in our community in psychology about the impact of long-term trauma and the impact it has on the mental health of people. So in the remote world, it's not necessarily that even if you're working full day or even if you're working half a day, you're living in a traumatic event which has no deadline. We do not know when this will end. And that type of uncertainty has definitely impacted the level of depression and anxiety that we're seeing. In general, women do tend to have more depressive and anxious symptoms. And the societal pressures add to all of those because of all the demands placed on women. And now with the pandemic, about 4 out of 10 women are showing symptoms of depression and anxiety. So that is the talk in our scientific committee of how will we address this? How will we address the lack of connectedness that comes in society, which has now been blocked for a year because of remote working? And one of the things that we're using to talk to each other while remote working is Zoom. And when people talk about Zoom fatigue, what's the biggest factor in Zoom fatigue? There is no eye contact. There is no body language way of communication, nonverbal communication. That's 70% of form of communicating intent and closeness is not there anymore. So there's that added disconnect of not only am I physically disconnected, I can't even look you in the eyes anymore. I cannot even feel close to you. I hear the words, but there's that connection that's missing.
What can we do as women, balancing the pandemic? And I think there's more certainty at this point than we've had in the past year that it will end. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but how do we balance that uncertainty, the uncertainty about the impact this had on our kids, the uncertainty about balancing all of this with our jobs? How should we be dealing with that?
So anytime you talk about dealing with any trauma like this that we as a society, as a human race are dealing with right now, is to really put in place small bits of success, right? So you have to have a list of small achievements on a daily basis. So that's your self-looping system of reward, to have some sense of self-worth, some sense of I achieved something, and also to really put in extra time to take care of yourself, whether it is to go for a walk for yourself, do meditation. Headspace, which is an app which has been free for all New Yorkers, and use apps like that, join a meditation group. So at our medical school, the Center for Behavioral Health actually started a weekly newsletter. It's an e-newsletter, which is based on a monthly theme for mental health. We actually list certain exercises to do. Really needs to take 5 minutes out of your day to do those exercises, but it really is to in some ways recharge your emotional battery and to take care of just yourself. Only then can you give it to your family or the children. If you don't have any of your own capital, you're going to be depleted all the time, and then you're sort of going into deficit, which is where mental health crises and symptoms come up. So it is to recharge yourself and then to also forgive some things. I think another speaker spoke about embrace, grace, and space. So it's that you have to forgive some downtime that the children are using to connect with each other through their iPads and their phones, and to kind of forgive that this time in the pandemic rather than have the strict rules that we had pre-pandemic. Allow your children to also talk to you about how difficult it is for them, knowing that you may not have the solution, but you may have the resources through the schools or HR to go find the solutions for them, and to connect with other parents who have children who are also expressing similar sentiments.
And finally, Dr. Raj, what is your take on how this will have a lasting effect for women, in particular, working more from home?
So for women working from home, I think your previous panelists also talked about, like, there is this blurred line of work and home that's happened. And I think it's about limit setting, but it's also, again, about forgiveness. You'll have to forgive when you see a pet walk by. And in my work, I have seen and met so many pets, so many children. And and I come from a place of, you shared that with me, and that's another part of you that I did not know. And I actually thank my patients for sharing that, because that's part of their life. It's in day to day. Those are their family members. And I think that's one part. Moving forward, I think that there is this gap in job loss and job reduction, particularly that's affected women, because more women tend to work in healthcare services and education and hospitality. And I think we as society have to address those issues, about getting women to work and to allow women to be able to have some of that flexibility of, there's going to be a child who's going to walk by and it's going to, come up with a boo-boo, and you need to take care of that. But for the women who are currently working, it is the important factor of feeling connected to other women. There's a concept of sisterhood that I tend to talk about with my female patients. There's something to be said about the power of sisterhood, of other women, that can really affect your self-confidence. And it doesn't have to happen in person, but to be connected to other women who tend to elevate other women and to elevate each other up. In this world of, uncertainty and remote working and so on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raj, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And speaking of that notion of community, our next guest is going to speak to that. Still to come today, we have Kim Stevens joining us to talk about the Women of the Channel community, how you can join, what content you can expect to see, and how it might just be the support system you need. We'll be right back.
This episode of Get Witty with It was made possible by Future Tech Enterprise. Future Tech is an award-winning IT solutions provider that helps companies simplify their toughest IT challenges, enhance procurement processes, and embrace emerging technologies. Learn more at ftei.com.
Kim Stevens, Women of the Channel Community Manager, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you being here today.
Glad to be here.
Our last segment today, Kim, you're new to the community and the community is new. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what drove you to manage a community like Women of the Channel.
That's a great question. I have been in the channel myself for a long time, over 25 years.
Well, you don't look a day over 29.
Yeah.
So that's so strange that you started working that young, but continue.
It's good filtering. So yeah, and I've done a lot of different things in the channel. So I've predominantly been in sales, but I've done marketing, I've done product management. And I really feel like my background led me to this position. I've always been really impressed with the channel company, and I have been a participant at Women of the Channel events in the past and was just super inspired by going to those events. So when the opportunity came to me to help run an online community to support women in tech, it was a blessing. I just said, how can I not? I get paid to do that. So it's, and that's why we launched this, is to help keep the connectiveness with women in technology throughout the year, so that obviously we can't have live events anymore, right? In-person events. Even if we were still having those, we would have launched this community because we wanted to give women a way to stay connected throughout the year, to be inspired and to inspire each other. And so I just am the person making sure that I connect all the dots to help promote this beautiful community that we have.
Before I bounce it over to Kenna, you've been listening to the rest of the presentations today, our conversations. What's your take on all of that? Some of this it's hard to talk about. Women are really struggling. Dr. Raj even talking about dealing with trauma. What do you think the community does to help women deal with that during this time?
That's a great question. The community is made up of women at all different stages of their career. So we have folks that are just starting out. We have folks that have been in the industry for many years running multi-billion-dollar companies. And so you have so many different experiences that all contribute to this community. So there's something that we all can share with each other to learn and grow. And when I've heard the panelists and the doctor before, what I love about women in general is when they come together, they are okay in being honest and vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, we find strength. And so in this community, we just happen to have posted a blog about how do you deal with grief in the workplace. That's a real life thing that not a lot of people talk about. And so one of our members, that was on her heart, and she shared her experience and just some best practices on how to address that. We have a lot of content that is coming in on work-life balance, self-care, as well as our own career development. And I think we really are working hard to make something available to everybody, regardless of where they are in their journey. And my hope is that that will help encourage people and help them when times especially are tough. They will realize they're not alone and there are resources available to them.
You did talk about that community and how leaning on each other can help. Tell our audience something about, what are some of the benefits of actually being a part of that community and how can they join?
Oh, yeah. So the benefits of being in the community is we have blogs, videos, webinars that are loaded onto the community almost daily. There's always fresh new content. And we try to cover topics that run the gamut from why should I have a sponsor or a mentor? What are some things I can do around diversity and inclusion? I mentioned self-care, work-life balance, peer perspectives, best practices. So that's what members can look forward to. Anybody can join for free. There are VIP opportunities, so you can upgrade your membership to VIP. And with that, we have live webinars every month. It's almost like going to a book signing and getting to meet the author face to face. We have subject matter experts that come in, and this gives our members live access to that person to ask any questions. We just did one on Tuesday on the art and science of body language and what that message, by the way, 7% of what people are receiving from my message are only from my words. Everything else is from my tonality, my body language. So there's just really wildly interesting things that we talk about every month. So that's what members can look forward to. And if folks are interested in joining, it's super easy. You just go to thechannelcocommunities.com, request access. That request comes to me and I approve you, and you are immediately in there and can start exploring and having some fun.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thanks for giving us your perspective today. And thank you to all of our guests for being here. I certainly learned a lot today, and I hope you did too. Get Witty With It is a production of The Channel Company, the parent company of CRN.
And remember, you can listen to this podcast and our other series on CRN TV, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcast. I'm Kenna Johnson.
And I'm Andrea Medeiros. Stay safe and find ways to keep smiling.